Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. You have reached Venus Unplugged, your heartbreak hotel, turning oi to joy. What we do here is we look at all things Venusian, whether it be the principle of Eros or Venus or Aphrodite in the invisible world, the thing that animates and activates our lives, our horrors, our sorrows, our art. And what we're looking at in the next couple of weeks is the Tarot, the 22 major arcana. But it is not about Tarot lessons. It is about that the 22 major arcana are kind of hints, guidelines to the individuation process. The individuation process is what brings us to wholeness. Now, sometimes we can begin at the end and end at the beginning, so it's not linear. I think that's also one of the issues that we can have with Venus. Is she's definitely not linear. She's going to show up all sorts of places, bidden or unbidden. So the magician is the symbol in the psyche, in the unconscious, of like the creator principle in us, or the trickster, the one who tricks us into becoming conscious very often, or what we would call the law of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, when the inner world manifests an event or a situation or an insight in the outer world. That's when the two... when we have a synchronistic moment, there is that little touch of magic. People will either go like, oh, no, that's not true. That didn't just really happen. Oh, come on, really? Or like, whoa, okay, got my attention. And in some ways, falling in love is synchronistic. You know, we want to fall in love, and we do our love dance and our tears and bring forth and call angels and do all this stuff. And then the person shows up, and it's like, oh, terrified. That's synchronistic. Or, oh, well, I've got to put that on the list. Well, you know, the truth is there is no list. It's whatever we can deal with. And I think the more we become individuated, it's so much easier to love. And, you know, it's not about closing the heart. When love is linear, we're thinking about him, she may not really be present, this archetype called love. So the magician. And why am I talking about the tarot cards? Because the tarot cards can be used, well, of course, they're used for divination. I started to use tarot cards maybe 30 years ago, not because I was particularly drawn to it or interested in the tarot, but because I could not explain my prophecy, my clairvoyance. And too much time was being spent with people saying, well, where are you getting that from? So I thought, well, I need something for people to project onto. And then I can say, well, because the cards in and of themselves, it is a symbolic language, like a waking dream. And so people can see something. We can see it. We can project onto it. And then that kind of calms down the part that doesn't want to believe or know, and or, you know, project it onto the cards. And then I can get on with what my natural gift is, which is, you know, the being able to hear the story in the soul. What is it saying? What does it need? What do these events in our life mean? So the Fool, which we talked about last week, and the Magician, you know, they're both places of the transcendental world. The Fool is somewhere like the unconscious divine child. And the Magician he's more learned, seasoned, purposeful. Now, the magician at its deepest level is the one that gives us the dreams, the dreaming. So that's who we meet. That's our dream teacher. So what I'm suggesting is someone, if you don't have a deck of tarot cards, have somebody gift you them, because that's the best way that they come to you in a kind of a natural, synchronistic way, and take out the 22 major arcana. And we can use these cards. Let's say you need some magic in your life. You need something to happen out of the blue. You meditate on that tarot card. It can be something that we want to enhance in ourselves, or something we want to chill in ourselves. We can also kind of conjure the black magician with our black moods and terrifying results of like how awful the world is. You know, that's the magician too, but it's in its negative form. So the fool can be a loner and secretive. Okay, but the magician is conscious. We have to work on it. And Jung, I'll try to post it also, that one of the things Jung, there was a wonderful article that Jung wrote, and it was all about how magic, all right, now you can't really teach it. You can teach methods, but the actual magic can't be taught because it comes from the nonlinear mind. It's something we need to practice, and it's really meant for us to become aware of what's going on inside and outside, and that we can affect the world. It's not usually used for something we want, although a lot of people misuse that. And, if it's about wanting something, work with angel magic. David Goddard, Goddard, wrote a wonderful, wonderful book on angel magic. And, of course, angels work on behalf of humanity. And so you're not getting your karma snared in some unconscious behavior. But with the magician, the symbol of the magician, we're also talking about, it's very connected to Hermes or Mercury. And Hermes is, of course, the messenger of the gods. And the Hermetic teachings is as above, so below. It is the different laws of the universe. And when we start to understand that, well, everything does have a law. As a matter of fact, that was the thing that got me into consciousness. I was on my way to Paris to design. I went to a psychic, and she said, blah, blah, blah. I was meant to the evolution of souls, and I was like, lady, get away from me. And but she mentioned laws, and I went like, well, actually, that I can study. That holds something for me. And of course, little by little, she was right, and I eventually took up the task of my fate, and now work with the evolution of souls. So, in the laws or the mystical keys of Hermes, what he works with is the law of mind, the mind, or what we would call the conscious, okay? And it's as above, so below. It is the law of vibration. It is the law of reconciling opposites. It's the law of how rhythm compensates. It is the law of cause and effect. It's the law of gender. So these are all important to study and meditate on, all right? And this is what the magician card can help us with. What are we really looking at here? What is this image? What does it mean to you? Or as I said, if you need a little magic in your life or something that you don't understand, walk around with that card, and look at it and reflect on it and call on it as a helper. Because the magician in us knows how to discern, knows how to separate the invisible forces. You see, in the card of the magician, he carries a wand. And the wand is an instrument for concentrating and directing energy. Energy needs direction, not will, not force, containment and direction. When one is, well, I guess in a way, anything that we're doing, we're a conduit for the magician. But I was thinking the most concentrated form is the artist. I mean, they're vibrating. Their very being becomes the wand and often have no idea what they're really up to. Some energy is directing them, and when they step away from whatever they are creating, they're just as surprised as everybody else. So that magic, that wand, that is also can be our body. It needs to direct the energy. That's in directing the energy. Once again, it is not forcing. Excuse me for clearing my throat so much, but it's still have this lingering cough. So it's also like the maestro directing the orchestra, moving that force. What are we looking at? It's like invisible writing. That's magic in so many ways. So the magician within can have both. It teaches us this direction. It teaches us this containment. It shows us, look, you need the elements. You need the fire, air, earth, and water. And, of course, the fifth element, which is the ethers, the consciousness. We need that, too. So anything that we're going to do, depending on how we work it, the four elements is the results. So the ego alone can't affect magic, but that master within can. So in a different way, it's like the magic of the alchemist, and the alchemist's work is also another symbolic language of individuation. When they turn the shit to gold, the negredo, the shadow, into consciousness, and that moves us towards wholeness. That's what they're talking about there. And there's these different stages, the whitening, the rubio. These are all different stages of transformation. And alchemy is the way that the ancients wrote were meant to confuse. So it's almost like you need to read it not with so much the concentration of the mind, but more as a distraction. More get a cadence and just move through it, and don't worry about whether you understand it, because it's not written for the logical mind. It's written for the imagination. So when you also need imagination, you're lacking imagination, you need an idea, meditate on the magician. Magnus, mage. Those are all words that have to do with the psychic nature, the inner psychic nature, which we call magic. So with the alchemists, they always hinted that the gold was not the outer gold, but the transcendence, the inner gold at the center of the psyche. So for those that are interested in alchemy, read Psychology and Alchemy by Jung. And he gives a very detailed account of stages of the great work. And that's what the alchemist called individuation. So that's all encoded in the image of the magician. So by observing that, meditating on it, bringing it, see it as a talisman, what we need for that day. Or if we're feeling dull, nothing happens, which means, we're at odds with imagination. Something's always happening, that's for sure. So, or we're not listening to Mercury, so then Mercury tricks us into all sorts of mischief. It's not paying attention. So it's like, I'll get your attention. Or we can have too much projection onto somebody, which is a form of magic. It could be a positive magic where we project the golden part, like, wow, isn't that person fantastic? Or we fall in love. That's a form of magic. We're caught in the inner projection. And 6 months usually it takes, and then the projection falls and collapses, and then we see what we really have. That human being, that struggling human being, and your struggling nature, and you found somebody to share that with, or not. Or you projected everything fantastic about you and left yourself starving, naked, without any connection. The part of the magician, the mercurial part, the inner magician, that's the part of you it's like a world-creating spirit. He can be concealed and imprisoned, trapped. Very often that's what a depression is. Or when we close our heart to someone, we're trapped. We can't participate in life and that heart energy. So we can trap ourselves or we can trap the other, and I don't feel anything. That's not a good sign. There's always something going on. But when we're just numb, now there's the not feeling anything, which can be neutral. So that's what you're actually feeling. You're neutral. Like, wow. Neither love nor hate. You've reconciled the opposites, and there's this neutral feeling. Take it or leave it. But when there's no feeling, when there's just cold, that's a feeling we've closed off the heart. Most of all to ourselves, because we just can't close it off to one person. That one person could be a particularly annoying factor, but if we're closing that down, believe me, we're closing a lot more down. It's not worth it. And we can't be the fool where we just open the heart to everyone. We need discernment. So this magician in us, this mercurial, powerful force, that's our teacher. It teaches us all the possibilities. Or to call on that mercurial nature so that you can understand. What is it? What's the meaning here? The world is not flat, and psyche is not flat. There's so much going on. And, we usually register what we register on a conscious level, but more and more humanity is beginning to realize, wow, there's a whole cosmos within that is really directing our lives if we become aware of it, okay? So, once again, the word magic is associated with imagination, which is a necessary ingredient for all creativity in the arts and as in the sciences as well. And in life, just filled with, imagination. Or you see, I don't know, there's a lot of showing of Easter baskets around. So you remember all, for those that, were into Easter, Easter baskets. When I was a kid, I come from a large family, so there were a lot of baskets. But I would get up early and clean off the black jelly beans because they would get that dust, and I wanted them to be as beautiful as all the other jelly beans. So, filled with imagination. And I just wanted everybody to be beautiful on Easter morning. And then, of course, you'd trade. Who wanted red, who wanted black. I mean, that was the big part. So that's imagination. And so is the imagination of the enemy. We imagine all the terrible things that this enemy does or this country does. And we forget about individual people. And we get tricked by other people's magic in the way they brand something or manipulate the media. Check the magician within for what you really feel. So the magician can, its consciousness is double-edged. We can use it to shape a new world, or we can use it to open Pandora's box of hidden things that destroy. So the temptation to misuse power is a hidden aspect of every archetypal figure. That you need to remember. The temptation to misuse power is a hidden aspect of any archetypal figure. Now, the powers of the magician, very, very primitive. They're part of the collective unconscious, and they're subtle. And so in that recognition, we begin to see, I better not release that. It's also associated with the 15th card, which is the devil. And that's the collective unconscious shadow. But for our uses in our love and in our Venus, we want to use that for co-creation, to bring a greater awareness to our lives and to ourselves. And the magician, just by observing it, it's like a trigger in the unconscious and the symbols in the unconscious. Now, we're not talking stage magic and doves coming out of eggs or whatever, that sleight of hand, which is an interesting image too, because the hand, of course, is so much the director and creator of life. We're talking about the symbolic. There was an amazing book by Franz, Franz Bardon, Bardon. It was an old book, and he writes about Frobado, the magician. And Franz Bardon was, I guess it was like in 1920s or something, very powerful magician, alchemist. People who are really into the magician, it's a lifetime. And as I said, you can study, the time and the placement, but you can't really teach somebody to be a magician. They either have a natural aptitude for it and will devote their whole lives to the movement. So it's kind of, you're also becoming conscious that out there is really something in there. We begin to realize that. Wow, look at this. My inner world and my outer world. The magician is the conduit for that. And it gives us the myth of meaning that said that humanity is a longing and a meaning. That's what myth gives us. Makes some sense. Because myth is not on a logical level either. people who can't think mythically or learn to think mythically. It's like, that's hogwash. It doesn't make any sense. And so therefore they're not connected to that. And the magician is the trickster that will also bring us insights out of order, right? Why am I thinking that? That's weird. Or, in love, we can, out of nowhere, get a kind of a morbid fantasy about someone being unfaithful. So is that a fantasy that we're really hurting our capacity and our relationship? Or is that insight? You need to weigh that. You can't jump to conclusions. You need to say, okay, first question is, where am I being unfaithful to the relationship? And that's not blaming, that's just questioning. Where am I in this? And then once that gets cleared up, because we can be unfaithful in many ways. I mean, I've seen situations where, certainly someone thought that their beloved was unfaithful, and it wasn't true at all. What it was the person was kind of having lunch with their mother complex or their anima. It's like, leave them alone. They're just, but we can feel that. Oh my God, they love another. Well, that's their inner feminine. That's their inner masculine. They've got to go off with that. He loves fishing more than he loves me. No, he's out there with his inner mermaid fishing. So let him, that's not being unfaithful. That's helping you because it connects him more to that imagination. So what we use this magic for, this magician for, is it calls in the uninvited guest. So the magician is the central character of our dreams, the dreamer who is both experiencing the subject and as observer. So it's a ghostly guide into the realms of the unconscious. So for those who want to kind of step up their dream work, ask their magician. Meditate on that, please. Let me wake up and have communion with this dream maker that we all have. And particularly if you're feeling that you don't dream, use that tarot card to help you. They're meant, the real meaning, well, it can be, of course, used for divination, but that takes a lot of practice and art. But it is used as a way to understand stages of consciousness. So when we pay attention to the dreams, we call on the magician. Or when we want to bring imagination to us. We're not forcing, that's black magic, forcing someone to love us or to do our bidding our way. You don't have that right. Even the divine has given us free will. And the angels can't even help us or intervene unless we use our free will to ask them. As with, these archetypal figures, these great figures that are really ruled and we don't know it. Those are all the things that bring this Venusian energy. How do you develop the capacity for beauty? We need to be able to see it with our inner eye. We need to see, because when you experience beauty, it's active. It's not flat. It's moving. It's strange and wondrous. And very often people feel, I can't have that. It's too beautiful. Well, you better correct that one right now. So let's use this week to look at the magic and the power of what magic is and our potential for illumination, or to understand dreams that we don't understand, to wake up our lives. Let's meditate on that. Let's see what begins to happen. So till next week, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Snap 'em, zap 'em, hold 'em, trap 'em. Mice, rats, or other rodents causing you grief? Get rid of them. Victor has the broadest, most innovative line of rodent and insect control products on the market. From our iconic snap traps with the big red Victor V to new products like Victor Holdfast, your mouse, rat, and insect problems are a thing of the past. There's a reason people have trusted Victor to get rid of pests for nearly 120 years. Because with Victor, it's done. Available at Walmart. Available at Walmart. Available at Walmart. Available at Walmart.